Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Move with the Caravan football preview with Jim Powers. Jim, how are we doing today?
Doing great. It's I say it every week, but my gosh, we're at week 8. Where is the season gone? But gosh, once again, great games last week. We're seeing some outstanding performances, some teams that are kind of, coming out of nowhere and doing some big things. And this is the time of the year where it's a lot of fun, and everybody's jockeying for position in districts. In fact, I just got done talking with Kyle Wagner. He's going to be on the podcast that we released earlier today, and we were talking about district seedings and how important they are. And their district, they're a 6-team district, so the number 1 and number 2 are going to get buys in the first week. So that makes the next 2 weeks really important for them, because they want to try and get that bye to get that week off to kind of, heal the wounds a little bit, get some of the bumps and bruises out and all that kind of stuff. So, that's kind of where everybody's at right now, is playing for district points, district seeding, because having that bye, if you're in an odd, district where there's, 6, 7 teams, it's great that you have that opportunity to have a week off and have that number 1 seed to get yourselves ready and to get your minds right for the district.
Yeah, because this time of year, everybody's kind of been through the mill. You got kids that are banged up. That extra week is so important. Plus, it's another week for the coaches to prep and try to make sure that their game plan is ready to go for that opponent. Because if you can win that game, that propels you into the finals.
Oh, without a doubt, there's no doubt about that, and that's what everybody's looking at now. Most of your conference titles are already solidified. Now it's just, okay, what do we need to do as a team to get district points, to get a higher seed, to be able to host a couple games? Because remember, in that first round, if you get a home game, yeah, you're making the split, but it's a 60-40 split. So you're still getting a pretty good gate out of that whole deal. So hosting is a big deal, but you get 1 and 2, and those districts are just a 1, you're hosting the whole way through. And that is a big, big advantage, especially with some of the teams out there and some of the, positioning that's going on, and especially some of these districts that are just going to be meat grinders to try and get through.
Yeah, and also the travel time for some of the districts, especially in some of the lower classes, because of how far away those teams might be from each other, that makes a difference too. So you want to try to wrap up any kind of home field advantage that you can.
Oh, without a doubt. Anytime you get a chance to wrap something up early and you can rest kids, and that was the one thing Kyle talked about, was next week, if they're fortunate enough to beat Lutheran St. Charles this week, they got St. Mary's next week. And that's a big game under normal circumstances. But now, you've got a Lutheran North team that will go in as the 1 seed no matter what happens. You've got St. Mary's that's going to be the 1 seed in their district no matter what happens. So are you playing for record, or are you playing to give some guys some extra rest and playing some of the younger guys to get them ready just in case it goes into a next man up situation, somebody goes down, and you got these younger guys that are ready to get in there, take step in and fill those shoes where they've been prepared, instead of coming in cold and not getting a whole lot of reps during the regular season.
Yeah, and that's going to be really big, and especially for the schools that are really have the high or the playoff aspirations to make it far in their classes. So speaking of those classes, Jim, let's look at state rankings. What do you think about Class 6?
Not a lot of movement, so to say, but you're starting to see some teams now cropping into the receiving vote side of things, which, once again, I think the experiment, and this is not a slap against the Smet. They've played a really, really tough schedule, but I'm sorry, you're 3 and 4. You don't, I don't care what the schedule is. There's teams there that have better records that deserve to be in the top 10. So that, I get it, but once again, when a St. Mary's team just smacks you around like they did against the Smet last Friday night, you got to look at that. You've got to look at those certain situations. So, the Smet drops down. CBC is still hanging there. They've got a couple big games coming up here over the next 2 weeks against a team from Indianapolis, and then they play Edwardsville next week. That's going to be just a great way to finish their regular season. You've got some of those other teams that are kind of creeping in a little bit, but once again, I still say this. I think Nix is still the best team in Class 6 right now, the way that they're playing. Liberty North, I mean, all people are looking at the possibility of Liberty North CBC rematch of the state championship from last year. Then you've got a Nixa team probably going to play DeSmet. And once again, I think the schedule for DeSmet is going to get them ready for a deep run. I think they could still win their district. And then that sets up a meeting with Nixa unless something silly with them and Joplin happens in the district down there. But my gosh, there's just so many great teams in 6. It's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out. But not a lot of movement, a little bit moving down. But I'm just glad to see some other teams starting to get recognized and get votes.
Yeah, like Seckman being a local school around here, I think they're putting together a fantastic season, and I think they obviously should have that kind of consideration for being at least ranked. I know rankings mean one thing, but at the same time, it's good because it helps your kids and your programs get the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the Waco rule, once again, the kid is phenomenal. And that was a great win for them this past week. I mean, the adversity that they had to face, they get a blocked field goal at the end of regulation and able to, get the score in overtime. Those are games that get you ready for districts, especially that district that they're in with the likes of CBC, with Kirkwood, and some of those other teams. So that's going to be something that's going to get them ready for that. They're going to be a top 4 seed. They're going to host a first round game, which is going to be really cool for Seckman to host, one of the big kids on the block in Class 6 in the first week of the district tournament. So, that's the kind of stuff that's really cool, and you love seeing that right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Class 5, what were you thinking about on Class 5, Jim?
I think it's Carthage. I think it is Howe, and then it may very well be everybody else. And I think that right there, the top 2 have just absolutely separated themselves from everybody else. Even though there's a big game down at the lake this week. I think Lebanon and Camdenton are going to hook up. That's number 3 and number 4, I think, in Class 5.
Yes.
Okay, so you got a 3-4 matchup there. You look at what Hal's done, their body of work throughout the whole season. You look at, what Carthage has done. Carthage coming off of a big victory this past week. So I think the separation is there. But then you look down, you've got some really good teams, some solid teams. MICDS is still in the mix. I think that district is going to be really, really tough for them to traverse through. But, I just still think in Class 5, it's Carthage, it's Howe, and then it turns into everybody else at that point of the ball game. Even though Lebanon and Camdenton, my gosh, that's going to be a heck of a ball game this week. 2 just great teams. Jeff Short down at Camdenton, this is his, this is the last lap, so to say, the last dance, going back to the Bulls thing. He's going to retire after this year, and I know those kids want him to go out on top, but they're going to probably have to beat Lebanon twice because they're in the same district. So, this is kind of the precursor to what you could see for a district championship moving forward into November.
Yeah, and talk about district standings and those points being important right there. I mean, that just says it all. So should be a fun one to check out and see. Maybe we can find it on some streaming service somewhere. Who knows?
Don't worry, it will be streamed. I will tell you that right now. My good friend from 550. Brendan Weesey does the play-by-play for Camdenton, and he's already said that they're streaming that game. It's that big of a game down at the lake and down in Southwest Missouri. And once again, I know we talk a lot about the local teams, but when you talk about statewide implications, my gosh, this may be the biggest game in the state of Missouri this coming week.
100% agree with that because of where they are and what it means. All right, let's look at Class 4. And, hey, St. Mary's is pretty good.
Yeah, and kind of just maybe a little bit. No, I mean, my God, what they did to to the Smet last Friday night was, that they got out early and just didn't hold back. They took care of their business against the Class 6 team. Once again, another great game that you're setting up to get your kids ready for districts. And that's what you want to have at this stage of the game. And it doesn't get any easier for St. Mary's. After this week, they got to play Lutheran North next week. Once again, we talked about that a moment ago. It's just a great setup schedule-wise for St. Mary's. I know you got Smithville sitting in there, and they've got a great program once again this year. Then you look down, you've got Hillsborough, and Hillsborough's got a monster matchup this week. And I know we're going to get into here in a little bit, but it's great to see Hillsborough hanging tough in there in an extremely tough Class 4, grouping of, that's what makes it fun. And I think there's some great if you want to put the early bet on them to win state, I think you got to, because they're beating people, and they're not only just beating their classification, they're beating Class 16. And also, they are playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, with the announcement that came out a couple of weeks ago. And they, if everything falls the way that hopefully it doesn't fall, that they want to go out with a bang with another state championship, and this time in Class 4 instead of Class 3.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they finish out the year, and then of course their uncertain future. Class 3. Let's move on to Class 3, Jim. And we said that St. Mary's is good. Cardinal Ritter's okay too.
Yeah, they're not too bad either.
Not too bad.
My gosh, they're good, but they're going to get a test. And I know we're going to talk about this game here in a little bit, but I tell you what, traveling down to Hillsborough, traveling down to a very hostile environment, a state-ranked Hillsborough team, the number one team in the state in Class 3, and Cardinal Ritter. We talked about Camdenton and Lebanon being one of the big games in the state. I think this one is an extremely close second to being one of the biggest games in the state, because it just a lot of implications and a lot of different things to look at. But boy, I tell you what, Cardinal Ritter has really taken this season by storm. A lot of the younger kids that there were some question marks earlier in the season, those question marks are gone. They are as legit as you are going to see. And it's not just the offensive weapons, it's the defensive side of the ball. And this is where it's really going to get interesting with them in Hillsborough.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's kind of move right into our highlighted matchups and just talk a little bit more about that, because that's where we start out. So right out of the gate, we have a huge showdown of 7-0 teams, as you just mentioned, on the docket as Class 3 top-ranked Cardinal Ritter rolls into Hillsborough to take on the Class 4 6th-ranked Hawks. Ritter has dominated on both sides of the ball the last 2 weeks, posting back-to-back shutouts. Last week, they defeated Lift for Life Academy 50-0, with sophomore quarterback Carson Boyd tossing 5 touchdowns in that game. Not to be outdone last week, Hillsborough posted a 79-0 win over rival DeSoto in a game where their defense had 6 interceptions. As you said, Jim, this is a huge matchup.
Doesn't get any bigger than that. I mean, you've got two teams. You've got a finesse team that loves to spread the field and do different things in Cardinal Ritter, and you've got a Hillsborough team that just loves to punch you in the mouth up front, run the football, and do big things. And that's where it's the clash of styles, so to say. But I think the overall feeling in this game, what defense is going to make a stop? What defense is going to do what they've been doing all year long and make the big stop in a key situation? And that's what this game, I think, comes down to fourth quarter. I don't think it's blowout on either side between these two teams. I think this comes down to the fourth quarter. I think both teams are battle-tested. I'm not even going to venture to make a pick on this one, because I think it could go either way because of how these two teams have performed, with perfect 7-0 records heading into Week 8.
Yeah, I think it's a push game for sure. I don't want to say one way or the other myself. I just think it's going to be fun to see how it shakes out and then to watch it. So our next matchup features the Festus Tigers traveling down Highway 67 and take on the Farmington Knights. After consecutive losses, Festus got back into the win column last week as they defeated Pacific 55-24, putting them at 3-4 on the season. Farmington, also at 3-4 on the year, comes in having dropped 2 in a row, losing last week to Poplar Bluff 34-21. Both of these teams are hoping to be back to 500 after Friday night. So what's your thoughts on this one, Jim?
And once again, you talk about a game that's got district implications. These are two teams that need wins. It's not the year that I know that the Tigers want. I mean, they started off slow, stubbed their toe a little bit, here over the last couple weeks. Got a nice victory last week over Pacific. But, once again, you've got to figure out a way to win to keep district points and to get yourself into that higher seed situation. I think this is a great matchup between two teams that love to just pound the rock. They're very good up front, offensive, defensive lines. So this is going to be a fun game to watch. I think the big thing for Festus is they need to figure out a way to spread the ball a little bit more out onto the edges, get the passing game going, because Farmington can be suspect to a little bit of the pass game. And we've seen that out of them over the years. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, game that's going to be won and lost in the trenches. I kind of like Festus in this one because I think they've got a lot more to play for when it comes to district seeding than Farmington does right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and it's been a tough season for Festus, but I do think that some of the younger kids going to be stepping up and maybe starting to right the ship, and we'll see if that Pacific game is any indicator of that going into this week. Our next game features an I-55 conference matchup as the 5-2 Herculaneum Black Cats travel to Coach Jarvis's favorite place, Perry County, to take on the 2-5 Perryville Pirates. Herky comes into this game having outscored their last two opponents 90-6, including a 44-6 win over Bayless last week. The Jackson Deering Lucas Barr connection has been a tough one to stop this season, with Deering passing for over 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns, with 843 of those yards and 12 of those touchdowns going to Barr. Perryville's defense struggled last week, losing to the Matter County Central 65-18, and faced quite the challenge from a high-powered Herculaneum offense. Jim, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is I hate using the word trap game for a team, but this is kind of a trap game for the Black Cats. I mean, Deering has just been terrific. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the metro area, without any doubt about it. Barr has just been terrific all year. And then you look on the defensive side with Maloney and what he has done as well. But you can't go into a game like this against a Perryville team that's kind of shuffling their feet a little bit and take them lightly. You've got to go in, because Herky's in a great situation with district standings. And when's the last time Herky's hosted a district game? It's been a while. And for them, yeah. And for them to take care of their business this week, that's going to pretty much solidify them in the top part of their district to be able to host, in that first round. But you can't overlook the Pirates. You have to go in, take care of your business, do the things that you've been doing all year long, playing solid offense, great defense. And I know that's what they're going to do. So, Herky, I think, gets this. But once again, if they're looking ahead, then it could be a totally different scenario.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Their offense has gotten going in the last couple of weeks, where they had a little bit of a, I guess I don't want to say like a slump, but they also faced some really tough defenses, and I think they figured out a few things. I think it's going to be key if they run the ball with Maloney as well on the offensive side and try to help establish the run game. I think that'll open up a lot of things passing.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's one thing you've got to do against the Perryville team is you can have success up front with your O-line and give Maloney the ball maybe 15 to 20 times, because that then is going to open things up for Deering to be able to run the RPO, to make some great decisions. And get what people aren't understanding about Deering. He's putting up great numbers, over 1,300 through the air. He's also got a ton of yards on the ground. I mean, he's not afraid to tuck it and run. And that's the beauty of that RPO offense that they're running, is they've got a quarterback that's making really, really good decisions. And not a lot of quarterbacks can grasp the type of offense that they run. And Jackson's just done a terrific job with that. And, with the guys that he's got around him, that's where you're successful. But I agree. I think you've got to get the ground game going early, establish it, let Maloney run wild a little bit, and then you can start doing the normal stuff that you love to do. You just got to make sure your defense is up to the task and making big stops in big situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it is a trap game. So hopefully we can see how it turns out. And personally, I'd love to see the Black Cats win another one. Our next matchup takes us north as we feature the 6-1 Class 5 7th ranked MICDS Rams taking on the 3-4 St Dominic Crusaders. After dropping their first game of the season 2 weeks ago, Country Day got back to the winning ways, taking down Lutheran South 54-13. The Rams got another solid game from running back Stephen Hall last week as he rushed for over 100 yards for the fifth time this season and scoring 3 times. St. Dominic comes into this matchup having lost their last 3 games, most recently 20-10 to Deschênes. The Crusaders' rushing offense struggled last week. Will need a big game from senior running back Sam Cross if they have any chance to take down this powerful Rams team. Jim, what do you think about this one, man?
Well, and this is a Metro League game. This is a game you throw everything. Well, Metro League versus AAA conference team. You throw it out the window, and St. Dom's is when they lost Jackson Overton in the Jamboree. I mean that was the heart of their team, and I know they've been doing everything they can to stay with teams and do the things that they love to do. And I think they can. I'm hoping, a lot of people are crossing their fingers that Jackson's going to be able to get back on the field here in the next couple of weeks. And if he can, it's a totally different St. Dom's team, but MICDS, they're kind of regathering themselves after that loss to Lutheran North. When you got guys like Stephen Hall, when you got guys like, Moore that just do great things for you offensively, plus they've got a really good defense as well. I mean, you got to take away what Lutheran North did against them. They're still one of the top teams in the state, and they're a fun team to watch. But MICDS, I think, will get the victory. But once again, I think St. Dom's, I think they're trying to ride the wave a little bit. They want to try and get at least one more victory over the next couple games to give them a decent seed because they're hoping to get Overton back once district starts. So, MICDS, in a win, but could be closer. St. Dom's is just trying to, hang on to get a higher seed.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough, and hopefully the young man does come back from the injury and has a chance to help his team and see if they can do something special. I mean, I know it'd be if they're probably in any sort of situation in districts, it's probably if any kind of win would be an upset.
Yeah, without a doubt, and that's kind of where you're looking at right now. But Brett Markoway's done a terrific job with that Crusader program. Last year they had such an unbelievable year. And once again, when you lose a kid that, after last year, you're talking about him, you're talking about Cole Rubel in the same breath. As being the best athletes, the best running backs in the metro area. And you get an injury like that. And Chris, you've coached for many years, I've coached for many years. You lose a kid like that, it devastates you. It devastates your coaching style, it devastates your kids. And you've got to motivate the kids to, it's that next man up mentality, so to say. And St. Dom's is doing it, but St. Dom's plays a brutal schedule. Let's get that out there right now. They're playing the St. Mary's of the world. They're playing the MICDSs. They're playing the Lutheran St. Charles, the Deschênes, all teams that are traditional football powerhouses. And, if you have a kid like Overton, you're going to compete in those games. Not having him has to change some philosophies a little bit, but they've done a good job. And I credit the coaching staff and I credit the kids for stepping up. I mean, they've gotten some great performances, and I think they're still a team to watch. I think they're a dark horse when we get into districts.
Especially if he comes back. And yes, I do know what it's like to lose my best player, not just once, but 2 years in a row. Next, we have the 0-7 McClure Comets traveling south to take on the 3-3 Kirkwood Pioneers. McClure lost last week to Melville 14-12, and the Comets' offense has struggled this season, averaging only around 7 points per game. Kirkwood comes in on a high as they picked up a big win over Lindbergh, 49-7. The Pioneers got a legendary performance from senior running back Deion Brown in that game as he racked up 352 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns in the game. Coach Macklin may have Kirkwood back on the right track, especially with that kind of performance. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, that's the reason this game is on our preview is the performance that Brown had. I mean, you look at the running backs that have come out of Kirkwood, the offensive guys that have come out of Kirkwood, and for him to put up the numbers that he did against a really good Lindbergh team. And let's not lose that in translation. Lindbergh's really good, but for him to put those numbers up and to score all 7 of the Kirkwood touchdowns, and over the year, the not being able to finish games for the Pioneers, I think this was a turnaround game for them. It was a game that kind of said, okay, we're back. We can start doing the things that we know we can do. And unfortunately for McClure, they're going to be on that side of it this week. In a game that most years is a pretty good game, but the way Kirkwood came off of that Lindbergh win last week with Brown doing the things that he loves to do, that's running the rock. I mean, they're going to be tough to beat. And once again, this is a Kirkwood team. They're in that tough district with CBC and with Stuckman. They've got to figure out a way to rack up a few more district points and get in that top 4 in that district. So this is a must win actually, the next 2 wins are must wins for Kirkwood. You need to go into district with a 5-3 record, because that's the only way you're probably going to be able to host.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's a heck of a performance. It doesn't matter who you're playing, but the fact that Lindbergh was they're a good team this year. They've got a good program. They're playing really well. And to put up those kind of numbers, I mean, that just shows you right there that they might have figured some things out.
Absolutely. And Jeremy Macklin, okay, it's his second year as a head coach, but just what he brings to the sideline, you don't see out of a lot of young coaches. The younger coaches, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're jumping up and down. Jeremy is so calm on the sidelines. And he gets his point across, and he gets it across in the proper way. And that's where the kids are starting to see that. And I think they're starting to react a lot better to it. Once again, their 3 losses were all losses that they had leads going into the fourth quarter with. And they had to figure out a way to finish. Well, guess what? A performance by Dion Brown, a performance by your defense, against a good Lindbergh offense. I think this sets them up to figuring a lot of stuff out and to be really successful moving through the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I do too. So I mean, I hope that they kind of set themselves up, and it should be a fun district with those 3 teams in it, and we'll see how it kind of stacks out whenever the seedings are finalized. Our next game features the 5-2 St. Pius 10th Lancers taking on the 1-6 Bayless Broncos. Last week, the Lancers took a tough 21-6 loss to Class 1 state-ranked St. Vincent, as the offense was unable to get the rushing attack of senior running backs Dabrian Moss and Austin McGuckin going. The Broncos took their 6th straight loss last week, dropping 44-6 to Herculaneum, as mentioned before, and have tallied only 6 points in each of the last 3 games. So this ought to be an interesting game to see how they bounce back after a tough loss last week.
Yeah, and this is a game, once again, to where for St. Pius, it's all about district points right now. And that's why, once again, you got to take care of your stuff. You got a backup quarterback. They're hoping to get Smith back maybe next week. If not, then in the first week of district. And that's what you got to do. You've got a victory once again right in front of you. You got to continue to do things the right way and do things the way that they've done all year. I think, what Dan Oliver's done, it has been terrific this year with a young group. And once again, Pius has a young core group of players this year that are going to be great players moving forward over the next couple of years. You just, once again, got to take care of your business. That's what week 8 and week 9 is all about. Taking care of the things that you have control of. Because if you don't, then you're going to drop down in district seeding, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. So you just got to maintain and do the things that you love to do.
Yeah, and it's going to be important to get the ground game going for the Lancers. I mean, that's where they've leaned on. I think that's kind of been their bread and butter per se, even when they had Smith, because Smith was rushing for yards, but he could also get the ball down the field. So getting those guys going, making sure they can block. And St. Vincent did a great job of shedding blocks, winning at the line of scrimmage. And the game was actually a lot closer than what the final score ended up being. It was 6-0 at halftime. And those I want to say buckets, I'm thinking basketball. But when you talk about those points, they came later in the game. But credit Vincent, they've had a great season. But St. Pius, I think this is a game they have to win.
Yeah, without a doubt. And St. Vincent is no slouch. And
no,
I just don't know what it is with Herky taking them to the wire a couple weeks ago. Pius, early deficit, but then tried to rally a little bit. But once again, this is a must win for Pius. And you don't normally say that with the record that they've got, but it still is with that district that they're in. You've got to stack up some more victories to get that higher seed. And I know people are going to say, why do we keep talking about that? Guess what? That's what everybody's talking about right now.
Everybody
is district seeding. I mean, you walk into a coach's office during a staff meeting, they've got it on a board. a whiteboard, what the district standings are, who's playing who. I mean, it's no different than sitting in that coaching room or that coach's office, because that's what they're talking about. And that's what we talk about, because it's very important. You want to host. You want to have that home field advantage. And that's the game right here. St. Pius, you get the W, you're taking care of what you can take care of. And that's controlling your own fate.
Absolutely. So our final highlight game showcases a Metro East matchup as the 6-1 Edwardsville Tigers travel to East St. Louis to take on the 5-2 Flyers. Edwardsville pulled out a win last week against Belleville East 28-27, but the Tigers will have their paws full with the Flyers offense this week. In the last 2 weeks, East St. Louis have outscored their opponents 135-0, including an 80-0 win last week against Alton. Jim, now both teams are ranked in state and Illinois. So how do you see this one shaking out?
Once again, this is for the Southwestern Conference title, or at least a piece of it. East St. Louis beat O'Fallon a few weeks back. Edwardsville, their only loss is to O'Fallon in that terrific game, in week 4. So, you want, if you're the Flyers, you want to end this thing, with a bang. You want to take care of your business, get that conference title, and then move on to next week, and then, get ready for the 7-8, playoffs over on the Illinois side. If you're Edwardsville, this is a monster game in a lot of aspects. Number one, you win, you're going to get a piece of that conference title. But number two, it's going to be those points that you can get over in Illinois, because they're going to be in 8A. They are going to be in there. Now, the question is going to be, what is your placement in 8A going to be? Do you see O'Fallon in the first round? Or are you going to catch O'Fallon maybe in the second round or in the sectional? So for the Tigers, it's a lot of different things. But once again, you don't count this team out. They beat Jackson at Jackson earlier this year. They are a really good team that they do so many great things. They've got a great quarterback. I mean, they can match up in certain aspects, but East St. Louis is East St. Louis. You've got to weather the storm. And you're playing at Clyde C. Jordan, always a tough place to play.
Should be a really fun game, though, to see how that one plays out, because both these programs are really good. Obviously, I kind of give the edge to East St. Louis, especially since they're playing at home, and this is going to be one to see if the last couple of weeks for the Flyers was kind of a fluke, or if they can keep that going. I'm sure it'll be a little closer than those scores, but I do think that they're going to. It's going to be a fun game to watch if you're there in person or watching it somewhere online.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game, not only here in the metro area, but also in Illinois. Once again, I go back to what some guy up in Chicago said about East St. Louis and them not being ranked in the top 10 in their first poll, that they got to stack up wins. That guy has no idea the schedule that East St. Louis played. That guy has no idea what they're all about. This is one of the best teams in the Midwest, bar none. And you look at their 2 losses. You look at who they've played. I mean, they're as good as advertised. I think, once again, I think they can make it to the 7A championship. I know a lot of people think that there could be the rematch from last year. I don't know about that just yet, but I'm telling you, they're going to make an awfully deep run. And the way Sunk's got them going, and congratulations to him. He got his 200th victory last week. For East St. Louis. And that's just a terrific accomplishment within itself. He's had some great kids, some great teams, but I don't care, when you get that milestone like 200 in the football ranks, you're doing something right.
Yeah, 100%. Congratulations to him for that. Well, Jim, it's been another fun episode. If you want to catch more content from Jim, check out scoopswithdannymac.com. You got anything new on there, Jim? Maybe 1 or 2 things or a bunch of stuff.
Maybe a lot of new stuff. Student athlete of the week yesterday, great young lady from Ursuline Academy, Taylor Windenberg. She qualified for the state golf championships on Monday, Tuesday next week as an individual. But how about this? She's also the goalkeeper for the field hockey team, and she's a sophomore. And she's just, it's just, you love telling those types of stories. You love talking about those types of kids, because it's great stories, and it just shows, the success that these student athletes can have. And then on the podcast, talk to Julie Jones, the head coach at Viz. On the golf side, they're looking for back-to-back state championships. And then Kyle Wagner, I love talking to Kyle. We just have so much fun just chopping it up about, football and kids and all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of great stuff there. We had the Scoops football poll on Tuesday. And then, tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the big matchups of the week. East St. Louis Edwardsville will be one. Cardinal Ritter Hillsborough will be another one that will get previewed. Plus also a lot of tennis action as well that will be talked about with some great teams qualifying for the tennis championships. And plus 2 softball. Softball's going on as well. So we'll have all that stuff covered for you on Scoop.
And it's 100% free, so make sure you check that out and see all the great content and see all these athletes and programs getting recognized. Well, Jim, should be another fun week of football coming up, and I can't wait to talk to you next week and see how things have shaken out since then.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you guys all next week. Have a great day. All right, bud.
Tune in for new episodes of Coach's Box each week on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or the Streamline Sports app. And you can also listen to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan football preview with Jim Powers is brought to you by Scoops with Danny Mack and Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.